Watch him throw the ball, we gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through fourth and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders, heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive. This is Trap or Dive.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to another episode of Trap or Dive podcast, provided to you by 214 Media and Hogs Haven, SB Nation. I am your host, Mual, Hen Dog Mual, Coach Mual, all that good stuff, man. And yeah, AJ's with me right now. AJ, how you feeling, big dog? If he's here, we're gonna give him some time till he get his mic together. Dre's checking in now as well. Dre, what's going on with you, player? How you feeling?
What's good, man? Happy the draft is over. You know what I'm saying? Got our new additions. Ready for the next step.
No bull. The next step. It's gonna be a couple of next steps that we got to talk about on this show today. That's gonna be pretty interesting. Where was you for the draft? You was just cooling in the crib?
Yeah, bro. I just stayed in the house, man. I had a couple of invites to go out, but I was like, you know what? I gotta stay up in because I was thinking about what y'all was talking about with the pick probably not gonna be till about 10:30. I said, I ain't going out the night waiting all night for a pick, man. I'm just gonna chill up in the house.
And I think we got 10 on the dot. If I remember right.
Yeah, I think it was around that time. Yep.
So it wasn't too bad, man. Okay, cool. Yeah, so shout out. Let me go first off, administrative items. If you are watching, if you are listening, whichever way you are doing it, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the follow button, man. We definitely appreciate it. Shout out to my boy Will, man. Will is the OG. On Twitter, he hit me up earlier today, and he was right. Like he had asked me, like, yo, because I was on vacation this weekend. My boy Nick from All 32 side had a birthday, so I can't control when his birthday is. But he wanted to go. He wanted to go down to Atlanta. So, but that ain't nothing. We had a good time, but there was no content for me this weekend. So for Will, and others who checked in, Monty, I know Monty checked in at one point. Matter of fact, here you go, right here. Monty checked in. But yeah, no content this weekend for the most part, out of the loop. But as you all know, if you follow me on Twitter or social media altogether, just stay tuned, stay locked in. Make sure you follow all of us on our handles. I think my handle is up here at Let Maul Tell It. And you'll be able to catch the content there. The clips will get posted a little bit quicker than the actual full film sessions on YouTube and on the Hogs Haven articles. So just stay locked in on the Twitter. You'll get your clips and figure out some things from there and all that good stuff. So now that all that is out of the way, draft talk, man. I think we're going to try and steer away from grades, but if we want to do grades, cool. Everybody in the chat, if you want to do a grade too, make sure let us know what your grades are. I'm not going to hold anybody against doing the grade. I'm going to refrain from giving a grade, but I do have feelings on the draft altogether. So I guess we can start there. AJ and Dre, if y'all want to get grades, be my guest. I'm not going to hold you against it. But if you have a grade or if you have an overall feeling for how you think the draft went, let's go ahead and start from there, and then we'll get to the picks all together.
I feel like AJ should go first here because he was hyping it up on Twitter. You know what I'm saying?
He was. What was AJ talking about?
Well, he was just talking about how he didn't think the team got any better. So I thought he wanted to explain his stance on that, after this draft.
Okay.
But no, I'll go first.
Okay.
It was actually, for me, I like the draft. It was a solid draft. At first, I'm not going to lie, like the second round pick of Emanuel Martin, I was like, huh? Thinking about it, like, we just drafted Emanuel Forbes in the first round as cornerback, which I did like that pick. But I like Emanuel Martin as well, but I just was surprised to see them double dip at DB so early. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, it makes so much sense. I mean, he's a slot guy, a Bobby McCain replacement. I also think he's an upgrade to Bobby McCain. So you got those two guys, my turnover guys. That's what I'm saying. The defense is, this is what I wanted to add. I thought we would just add one of those guys, but I wanted someone that could flip the field. We talked about this on the last show. So, I mean, I was happy with those first two picks, and then we double dipped on the OL. I'm not going to lie, Mual, I'm going to defer to you on the OL because I know you look at those guys. I understand that more when watching. But, I mean, I hope at least one of those guys emerges as a starter. I mean, I love that you got those guys in. I've heard good things about them from a couple of people that's usually good about evaluating these guys. So, I mean, hopefully, like you said, one of those emerges as a starter. But you can't be mad because you had to go, IOL. We needed IOL in this draft at some point. And so we got both of those. Then, of course, the KJ Henry pick, man, I love that pick. That was, he played at Clemson. I mean, he's a really good player, edge player. I mean, we needed that position, and we didn't go too high early on edge, which I was a little worried about at first. I thought we were going to kind of, panic and say, oh, we need this guy because of the Chase news. But I love that you went there. I mean, they double dipped there as well. I mean, we'll talk more about maybe what I don't like a little bit later, but the running back pick, I was a little bit, not too high on. I mean, not because of the player, but I just thought he was too similar to what we had on the roster already. So, but other than that, I thought it was a solid draft.
Yeah, I thought it was solid too. Like, I'm not overly one way or the other, positive or negative. I thought it was solid. I think the biggest thing is, like, when I think about how Washington approached it, ultimately, like when it was said and done, they set out exactly what they was trying to do from the get-go. Like, it wasn't no charade. they didn't try to play games with us. Who knows who was on their board that they really wanted and missed out on, right? It could have been a receiver, it could have been a tight end, it could have been a running back. I saw a rumor, unconfirmed. I've been out the loop this entire weekend, ladies and gentlemen. So please cut me some slack and Google it yourself if I'm dead ass wrong. But there was some rumor that I saw that suggested that the Washington Commanders were interested in Jahmyr Gibbs. They really like Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, again, unconfirmed. I don't know how much weight it holds. I don't know anything. But to my point, we don't know who was on their board that they couldn't get. But overall, when you get the picks, when it's all said and done, you get your offensive linemen, your two interior guys. I was really thinking with Osiris Torrance on the board in the second round that Washington probably could have went that way. And that's a guy who you all know, I talked about him a lot. I mentioned him often, and I thought that this was somewhere that would work. Like, he can do gap scheme and zone scheme. So whichever route that Bieniemy wants to go in terms of his offense, Osiris was right there. So I'm a little interested, but I also, alternatively speaking, when you come to know your second round pick, where is he at? I had everything pulled up. Hold on 1 second. Oh, I'm tripping. I'm looking at the wrong. Okay, so here we go. When you put up your second round pick and Jartavius Martin, I think you kind of understand like how much that meant to them and how important the defense is just as much as the offense. Ultimately, you got your center, right? And you got another guy who can maybe fill in the interior. And who's to say the center may not even be starting week one. But he is a guy that's somebody that they're going to add up to the depth. But point is, when you go to that second round pick, ultimately with Osiris Torrance on the board and other linemen that they were reportedly interested in, some were actually taken at that point. Martin is a guy who, obviously, the easiest way to say it is a guy who's going to replace Bobby McCain. He can move in the slot. He can play post if he needs to. He can play all three safety positions. All two safety positions. And he can play the Buffalo nickel. So you kind of understand the pick with him. And ultimately, with your first two picks, when you think about, I think somebody made a great point online, and they had said, like, we talk about how much help that Sam Howell needs, right? And we're going to get to the legitimate side of the offense soon. But when you think about the type of help that Sam Howell needs altogether, like run support, playmakers, blocking, coaching, he also needs a team that can help give him short fields or even get consistent 3 and outs. And ultimately, when you think about Emanuel Forbes at number one, when you think about Jartavius Martin somebody who has the athleticism to cover a lot of ground and a lot of space on the defense. Like, these are threats just as big as getting him another name or another skill position on the offense side of football. So it's good that they're bolstering up a defense that was solid last year. But you're not an elite defense if you can't turn the ball over. And they weren't an elite defense last year. Top 10 was commendable. It was respectable. But it's crazy that you're a top 10 defense and can't force turnovers. So, and the other thing is, you would have thought that you was getting that the threat of turning the ball over from your pass rushers in Montez and Chase, and they're nowhere to be found in terms of creating turnovers. Like, they're nowhere to be found. So you got to find a way to bolster up your secondary that was hurting last year, and they were able to do that. And for that, I think that they hit the nail on the head in terms of their approach. In an offensive line, same thing. You need to help on the interior, and I commend them for that because they stuck with their approach in terms of the prospects that they found. Obviously, they got to hit the field. We'll see what they're talking about, but that's where I'm at right now. Solid draft as well, Dre. AJ, how you feeling, big dog?
I'm good, man. Was having some technical difficulties.
All right, you good, man?
But yeah, man, I mean, in regards to the draft, like Dre hinted to, I don't feel like they got better. I feel like the depth at cornerback was so lacking last year anyways. It's like you were going to come into this draft and probably take a corner at some point. And we seen how they maneuvered with free agency. I think they kind of dictated how they were going to move in this draft. I feel like none of the players that we really wanted as far as like our particular group got selected at all. I'm not really concerned with Emanuel Forbes' weight. He played in the SEC for a long time. But it's crazy for me. I think I finally got a better understanding of the type of players that Ron Rivera and company want. But like I stated on Twitter, this is their last draft anyway, so there won't be another discussion about Ron Rivera, Martin Mayhew, and Marty Herney ever drafting again in the NFL. Not just with the Commanders, but overall. Like, this their last hoorah. But I mean, they definitely went after 4-year players, like guys that either played 4 or 5 years in college. That was typically the structure of who they drafted. I don't really think they took anyone that didn't play 4 years. They didn't take any juniors. Yeah, I might be wrong, but from what I remember as far as Forbes, Martin, Stromberg, Henry, Rodriguez, and who was the other kid? I missed somebody, I feel like. But it didn't take anyone that was not a 4-year plus player in college. I mean, I just feel like my main thing that I hated was Martin Mayhew saying, "I wish I was a bit more aggressive in trading." What the fuck do you mean? Is there another draft happening next week that we don't know about? Like, when do you have another opportunity to get aggressive? Like, are you serious? Because before the draft even started the second day, it was heavy rumors and it was reported by both networks of Washington trying to get up to the 32nd pick in the draft, that they were trying to move up. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, they probably want Brian Branch because Martin is a great value, like at Walmart, you know, like the off-brand Kellogg's cornflakes. Like, he's kind of a great value Brian Branch, but Brian Branch was sitting there in the second round. So it's like, what happened? What caused you to not be more aggressive? And of course, their trade partner was the Buffalo Bills. Well, when they ended up trading during the draft, it's just for me, it's like you're seeing teams within your division get more aggressive and add playmakers into the mix, and I just didn't really like the approach. And I think even that particular day that they did the first round pick, they said they didn't have any trade partners to move back on 16, which I felt like was going to happen because I don't see them being aggressive. And it really takes an aggressive approach to get some of those teams to think that you're going to do something else. And it seems as though the league knew that they were going to take Emanuel Forbes at 16. So nobody was pressed to try to trade with them.
I think that's an interesting point. Like from the angle in which you speak, like the league, I'm presuming, let's have this conversation on the sense of like that's true, because it is interesting. If the league understands that you're taking a player, as you stated, like go ahead and pick your guy, bro. Like we ain't sweating all trading with you, bro. So like do your thing, and we ain't got to worry about talking with you. Like you ain't a threat to us. And for them to have the, again, presuming the conversation of this being factual, or like for them to have the conversation after the draft to say we couldn't move, like nobody wanted to call us. Like I feel like that's probably, if it is, like that's probably a tell on your evaluation, as opposed to like other people knowing that you need a cornerback, or you need an offensive lineman, but you're going to go with Emanuel Forbes.
Or you got a couple rats in your room that's talking too much, because right after they picked, New England went and took Christian Gonzalez. New England should have been under the perception that, damn, Christian Gonzalez has dropped. Washington is going to pick him. Let's make a phone call to see if we can move up to get our guy, because Emanuel Forbes was not going to be their guy, right? He just
the Patriots traded down too, right?
I think Patriots traded. I think, yeah, they traded down because in the beginning, I think they had the 14th pick or something like that.
Yeah.
15th or 14th. I can't remember exactly. But this was a draft where teams were moving, like teams were trading all over the place. You feel me? So it's
they traded back. Oh yeah, because Pittsburgh moved up. And took
so it's like no team had a thought that you were even going to move on to a different player. They knew that if you were sitting at 16, you would take a Forbes, and they could have got more assets from possibly New England or whoever. You feel me? But instead, that didn't take place, and it was just weird, the pressures that happened, not just only the first day, but the second day, like, or not. So
let's get into one comment since we're here on the pressures, and then we'll get right into the picks. How do we feel about Rivera? I didn't hear it. I just saw the quotes. I was catching up on the way back home. But Rivera said, when he's talking about value, that a lot of people was calling him during the draft or texting him during the draft that, you know, they made really good picks, and after each pick, like, and then some occasions later in the Saturday draft, they were telling him he had great value on picks and stuff like that. But overall, like, their perception or the message that they get out there, how do you feel about like their processing or how they take into account people's opinions of their picks?
I mean, I don't know. Are we little kids? Like, are you expecting people to be like, damn, you did a bad job with that pick? Like, like what are you expecting? Like, I don't know. Like, oh, man. That's why I don't really get too frustrated with it, because I know this is the last year as a fan dealing with this nonsense.
I think they overthink it. I do. I mean, you could tell it bothers them. I mean, even with Mayhew sharing that he wishes they were more aggressive, it feels like they're trying to get a pulse for, you know, what people are going to, you know, how people are receiving them. Like, they know people are coming at them with such disdain over some of their decisions. And I mean, Ron and them, they seem to go above and beyond to prove that, hey, we're doing this the right way. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to do that. Like, sometimes they are either he tries to not give too much, and then there's times where he's just too transparent, and I'm like, okay, we see right through you. So no, it's overdone. They're overthinking it.
I think especially with the aggressive thing, that's important, because I mean, we all know at this point, like, you are what you are after 4 years, right? We see it. But for you to kind of state it, and maybe when he said it, he was just saying it in passing. Like, he wasn't really thinking too hard about it. But at the same time, like, just to have that general thought process of like, I wish we were more aggressive, kind of shows you that, like, that's kind of been your thing your entire time here. You weren't good enough to get Amari. You weren't good enough to get Russell. Who else? You weren't good. it was somebody who else am I thinking of? Another trade. Russell Wilson was this year.
It was
Stafford.
Stafford.
You weren't good enough to get Matt Stafford. And you missed out on somebody else, I think, in free agency, maybe. Can't remember. I'm slipping on the name. But your aggressive nature, like I put it this way. Here's the best thing I can say for us, Dre. I am not the biggest. I don't put a lot of money down when I make my bets. But when I'm feeling it, like hey, that hand is hot, boy. I'm about to, hey, when I'm feeling it, bro, I'm gonna put me down to like a little $200 parlay. Not a lot, like 2 teams, something like. I'm not stupid. Like I'm gonna risk it, but I'm gonna give myself a chance. 2 teams, 3 teams, something like that, and I lose by 1 pick, right? So I think like what that does for me generally, I'm a person who is like, I take small risk and I hope that the smaller risk pay off for a bigger reward. And I think how they view these things and how they view their draft picks, for obvious reasons, they're reserved. I mean, not for obvious reasons, but based on their actions, they're reserved individuals and they're banking on these smaller investments to become booms. Like they don't care if these smaller investment busts. They just want these smaller investments to go boom. Like they want these guys to become the superstars because they're not going to go out there and do what it takes to get the best player that's available in a superstar in Matt Stafford. I'm not saying like that. The perception, like this guy who can win us a lot of games in Matt Stafford. Same thing with Russell Wilson. Despite what he looked like in 2022, like that was your guy that you targeted. I'm not going to hold it against you for going after Russell Wilson in the moment. Like you just don't have enough of what it takes to go get these guys. And even Amari Cooper, like at the end of the day, the deal that you gave him, he made more in Dallas than he made in Washington. So you should have gave him more in Washington so you could beat the tax thing. So like it's kind of all these things, like they make small investments and they hope that they go boom and just say our evaluations were right. We don't care about giving up so many assets to get one person when we can stick to our guys and stick to our board and just hopefully hope that these guys go out here and become superstars.
But Maul too, that just goes back to Ron just kind of going through a turtles-like pace and how long it's taking him to rebuild the franchise in a sense. I mean, when he said in his presser it's going to take 5 years, he really operates like he has a full 5 years, and he did have a full 5 years ultimately. I mean, maybe he gets to 5 next year. I don't know. But I mean, at the beginning, that's what he said. He said, this is going to be a long process and you don't see him taking any shortcuts. And, you know, that's what annoys fans when you're kind of sitting in the mud, you know, you're kind of going to that quicksand, you're winning 7 games, 8 games, you're just doing enough to keep your head above water. And Ron just kind of keeps the course going. It's like, hey, you know, we win 8 games this year. Oh, we're close enough to win 10 games next year. And it's like they don't want to take it, you know, to the moon or so to speak. And that's why when a lot of fans, I was watching the draft, you know, I seen some of the reactions on social media. Anytime the Eagles make a move, it triggers our fan base. I don't care what the Eagles do. The Eagles can sign a new water boy and our fan base be like, oh, Howie Roseman did it again. You know, why can't we do that? So, I mean, but it's still fun to see the Eagles attack success the way they do. And I can see how it does frustrate our fans because, like I said, we've just been sitting in that little mud spot. We're just waiting and inching to get better. And I know Ron and his staff, they're banking on Sam Howell maybe to, step up and, be a guy for them. I guess that last little hope for them. But as fans, we're a little impatient right now. So we want to see a little bit more. And that's why I can see fans getting frustrated.
All right.
I was gonna touch on it. My bad.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, I almost feel like in year 4 the team has moved backwards because of the quarterback situation with Sam Howell. With you now putting out there that he could possibly be the starter, and then bringing in Jacoby Brissett, is like you truly don't have an answer here. And there's no hope for the fan base to really, I mean, some people are hoping that he hits, but what's the likelihood of that truly happening? It's like slim to none. And I feel like they don't even believe in it. They're just hoping that it does. but they aren't truly sold on it, or they would just outright say Sam Howell's going to be our starter. What's the need to bring in Jacoby Brissett or any veteran backup to compete with him if you truly believe in his talent and what he brings to the table? It's just like you just playing with the team once again. Like,
let's go ahead. This quarterback conversation is going to drive us all crazy. But let's go ahead and get into these picks, bro. Starting with Emanuel Forbes. Are we going to do? Magic says, okay. The issue I have with Rivera is he should have started Sam the second the Giants game, let him finish the rest of the season. Sam Howell will shock a lot of people. Good thing you didn't say for good or for worse. Amani, they got spoiled by Curl's success, buy low and sell high. Ron is very mid. Amani says, appreciate you checking in as always. And everybody that's just checking in, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Reminder on the podcast side, make sure you hit that follow button if you are not doing so. Back to the picks, Emanuel Forbes. Are we okay with this pick? Do we hate it? Do we love it? I guess I'll keep that structure as we go down the list. But Emanuel Forbes, Mississippi State. I personally was surprised that there wasn't a run on cornerbacks initially, like at the time that Washington picked. Like it was only the top two off the board. I take that back. It was only Witherspoon off the board, I believe, and Gonzalez was still there. I should say I was surprised that they went with Forbes over Gonzalez, but based on what I was hearing, they really like Forbes, and we kind of knew that before the draft, like they really like Forbes. But I don't understand. I'll put it this way: Forbes and Gonzalez will forever be tied with their careers, especially when it relates to the Commanders, not necessarily the New England Patriots, but the Commanders, because they had their pick of the litter in terms of prospects who were rated very highly, and Gonzalez was up there. He was neck and neck with Witherspoon. So for them to stick with Forbes, despite Gonzalez being on the board, is interesting. I'm not going to say they made the right or wrong decision. That's going to take some time for us to figure it out. But I was surprised that Gonzalez made it to that spot, and they chose Forbes over Gonzalez. But I like Forbes. I like Forbes. I like what he brings to the table. Playmaking ability, has good ball skills at the catch point and the contest point. So that's going to be good. The question is the opportunities. Like, is he strong enough in coverage on the next level that can allow him into those opportunities to make plays on the football? And that doesn't necessarily mean strapping, but it also means baiting quarterbacks into throws that they shouldn't make. So we're going to kind of see how that goes. But I like the pick with Forbes. Just a little bit interesting with Forbes and Gonzalez both on the board at 16.
I personally loved it, man. I mean, I know, like I said, I was actually shocked too. I was shocked because I was like, oh, Gonzalez is the guy everyone's talking about. But it was clear that they had a goal in mind with this draft pick. That goal was, we want to turn the ball over more. As Mual, you said it earlier, you're not an elite defense if you can't turn the ball over. I mean, if you're getting off the field, sure, that's cool and all, but if you're not flipping the field at any point, or you're not, getting enough momentum like that in those games, it's going to come to bite you in the ass at some point, and you're not as good as you think you are. So it was clear that was the goal, and that was what we talked about. That's what I said. I said, if I'm going in the draft, I want guys with ball skills. I want a guy that can go to get the ball, they can turn the ball over. And Forbes is just a very dynamic corner in that sense. So you can tell that's what the team wanted. And, I know a lot of fans, they read the mock drafts and they see Christian Gonzalez rated higher. He could go top 5, he can go top 10. You've seen it all year. But again, when it came down to what this team wanted, they wanted to turn the ball over. And they felt like they got probably the best guy in the draft at the cornerback position and doing so.
AJ, where you at?
Yeah, I mean, I like the pick in regards of having a ball hawk on the defensive side. Ultimately, I wouldn't have. I guess the way the draft played out, that was a solid pick. I mean, trying to think who else was on the board at that time. Not really too much that I would have liked for them to add. I would have liked to see them get a bit more aggressive, possibly move up how it was playing out, but they didn't. Ultimately, if Forbes can, bring his ball hawking skills to the NFL, I think he could be a big difference maker for this defense, because they need to flip the field, as we stated a lot during the 2022 season. they need someone to make some plays on the ball. I mean, Defoe was doing that, but outside of that, it was rarely happening, whether it be forced fumbles, whether it be interceptions, tip passes, something like it just was not taking place. I think the interesting part is with the addition of Forbes and Martin, what now happens to Kendall Fuller in his role with this team. But that's my only concern per se with the pick. But I mean, the player, I just hope that the fan base understands the type of player you are getting. You're getting someone like a Trayvon Diggs. A lot of people mock Trayvon for the yardage that he gave up, but can you imagine if this defense had someone like a Trayvon that had 11 interceptions in the season at cornerback? You would take that all day. I think Trayvon had only 3 last year, but still this team has been lacking a ball hawk really since D'Angelo Hall has departed from the Redskins franchise. So it'll be interesting to see what he does at that position.
Yeah, AJ, I'm with you, and I think I'm glad that you mentioned Diggs, right? Because there's been a lot of pushback, and I'm not here to make people feel. I'm not trying to make people feel bad about like them fighting for a player that their team is drafted. But I do want people to understand, like, y'all got to understand, like, every person in the NFL coming out of the draft had concerns about them to whatever varying degree. And like some were glaring, some was minor. Forbes's frame, he is light. Like, he is light. And it's not about the fact that he's 168 pounds or even still that he just probably put on some weight. I think he said he's like 170 something. That's fine. But I think you got to understand that there are some cornerbacks, some receivers in the NFL who are strong at the catch point, who are strong at the release point, who are strong at the top of their routes, like and who have cornerbacks like Emanuel Forbes who've checked them over the years. And those small frame or thin frame cornerbacks can't really do nothing with them. And obviously that's going to come into some game planning things, and Del Rio's going to have to find a way to get those things kind of sorted out. And even the DB's coach or whatever, like, they're going to have to find ways to maximize the players on the field, and that's fine. But I just want people to understand, like, that's not a fake thing. Like, injuries, sure, like he hasn't missed, he's missed one game, and it wasn't due to actual on the field injuries. Like, it was off the field related. So you don't have to probably worry about him not being a person who gets hurt because he's small or because he's light. But I do think in terms of actual playing receiver and having a cornerback check that receiver, like, that matchup is going to be something where you're looking at his frame and you're saying, okay, I hope he can keep up with some of these physical receivers, because that is going to be something to watch for in his career moving forward. He's also aggressive, as AJ mentioned, similar to Diggs. Like, these guys, like, they trust their eyes so much that they jump. That's how they create turnovers. Like, they know what they're seeing because of film studying. Like, the counter is offenses know that you're aggressive, or they know that you know. So we're going to try and play off of that. So that's a good thing for Forbes, and it could be a bad thing. And you have to understand the cornerback that you get. Like, this is a guy who's going to get you turnovers, but don't kill that man if he's giving up a couple plays here and there, because he's getting you the ball back at some point.
Oh yeah, you already know it's going to happen, and that's going to happen. And that's why, like, I'm trying to say it on Twitter, I'm trying to say it on our platform. It's like, when you have a guy that picks up a lot of interceptions in college or the NFL, it's typically because they're taking risks. They're predicting what the offense is going to do, or they're trying to route match, or they're baiting the quarterback into these opportunities to get their hands on the ball. And that's why it was important for Washington to feel like they needed that guy. Because, I mean, even though people know my relationship with Ben or whatever, but that's not really his strong suit. It's not everybody's strong suit. You feel me? Like, some guys just not ball hawks. But in order to be one in this league, and those that are successful at it, they're baiting the quarterback into those passes.
But see, and that's the issue, because a lot of fans look at the cornerback position and they think that to be a good corner, you have to be a strictly shutdown corner. You know, they just think of the Champ Baileys and the Darrell Reeveses, those type of guys. But You have the D'Angelo Halls, the Pac-Man Jones of the world that came around. I mean, these guys can flip the field. They can make the turnovers. Like I said, the Forbes. I mean, I saw it with this fan base. Whenever D'Angelo Hall would give up a pass or something, to him, to everyone else, he got burnt. He was the worst player in the game, regardless if he could turn the ball over or not. But, they're going to only focus on those times where guys are catching on him. And that's how a lot of them going to remember the guys. They're not going to remember the times that he's doing stuff that no other defensive back has done, which is getting all of these touchdowns, pick sixes, whatever the case may be. But a lot of fans just kind of can't get that balance. And that's what I can see happening with Emanuel Forbes, because he's, I told some people, he's not going to be a shutdown guy. He's not going to be that guy that's going to go and just wipe a wide receiver clean in the game. But he is going to be a guy that's a threat on the field, and he can get you that momentum at any given point, especially in key points in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, I've represented 2 ball hawking cornerbacks in this league, in Asante Samuel and D'Angelo Hall. And like you said, like, people hated maybe the way that they tackled or they gave up certain plays. But, I mean, I think D. Hall finished with 46 career interceptions in the NFL. He had 4 interceptions in one game. That's a tie NFL record.
Hall of Fame, bro.
That probably
Hall of Fame game.
It almost could have got eclipsed last year by Asante Samuel Jr.
and D'Angelo Hall never played with a defensive line like we have now, neither.
Nah, never. So you got to be able to take those risks. And what Asante Samuel finished his career with 51 interceptions. So those guys definitely gave up some yardage, but the reward of getting that ball and being able to possibly take it to the crib is a hell of a feeling, but it brings a lot to your defense when that quarterback knows, I got to be careful with this ball, or number 13 nowadays, who would be Emanuel Forbes, is going to take that thing and possibly return it to the house, because that's what these teams are going to be reading in their game plans and their scouting before they play Washington on Sundays. Oh, they got a guy, Emanuel Forbes from Mississippi State. Yeah, he's a rookie, but his hands are elite for a cornerback, and he's known for taking it to the crib. That's something that's going to be highlighted going forward.
Second pick, fellas, Jartavius Martin from Illinois. Like I mentioned earlier, Dre and AJ, not sure if you heard me, but I, for one, in the moment, was thinking with Osiris Torrance on the board, this was somebody that I thought could have really helped Washington. And they went for Martin, Jartavius, which is fine. And to the point that you mentioned with Kendall Fuller, this is where I really thought that a conversation for Kendall Fuller needed to be had. Because you got Jartavius, and the projection is for Washington, he's going to play safety, both spots, and then he could play nickel as well. And that eliminates a lot of the ideas of where you can fit Kendall Fuller. Like, you got Forbes, who's going to be on the outside. Benjamin Juice is best served on the outside. Now you're thinking, well, my thought was, I'll say it this way. My thought was Kendall Fuller is a guy where he wasn't, y'all know I didn't think he was that good. I don't think he's that good. But I know that he was smart. And I thought that you can at least give him a shot in the slot again. And he didn't look too good in the slot the last time he was out there, but he really out of options. And if slot is the last spot that you can really put him, and you still don't think he's that good there, then the odds are is he's probably a training camp cut candidate, or he's a post June 1 cut candidate, or maybe even a trade partner for somebody who can pick him up for like a 5th or a 6th round pick or something like that. So that's kind of where I'm at with Jartavius altogether. That pick, what it signifies for me. And as I mentioned, I think this is their Bobby McCain upgrade in terms of younger, faster, and being able to do the same things that he can do. But it also spells out Kendall Fuller's time being limited, in my opinion, here in Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a Bobby McCain replacement for sure. They realized once they moved him down the slot that it changed the defense a bit more. I think Fuller has an opportunity to play free safety. I like Kendall being able to look
over Derek, or you're saying like part-time role type deal?
I think possibly full-time. Because I don't really see them cutting him. I don't really see them making any cuts, honestly. Maybe Chase Rouillet, but it looks like they're going to keep Logan. I I think a guy like Kendall, you probably would have allowed him to move on sooner to be able to, get on with a team. But ideally, I mean, you're going to play Ben outside. You're going to have to play Forbes outside. Martin is now your new slot guy. Curl is down in the box, kind of like your Buffalo nickel. Fuller, I think Fuller would be amazing at free safety. I think just being able to have he's a ball hog. Like in college, that's what he did at Virginia Tech. You feel me? But unfortunately, you don't get a lot of those looks at slot. But in Kansas City, in that championship run that they made and they won, right? He played a lot of slot, and he also played a lot of free safety before they added Tyrann Mathieu to that franchise. We might think he's a bit slow, but he knows the game and he can read it. And I think that's where default issue is at this point. Like he definitely is a ball hawk, but he still doesn't fully grasp all the concepts yet. And I think that's somewhere you could probably plug in Fuller to be your free safety.
I get the processing side of it, the mental side of it, and just being as smart as you can be on the field. But like sometimes, like I don't think at 28 years old he ain't done. But I also think that he's just not as athletic as the rest of these people on the defense is. Like you have to really be super good. I think in terms of Kendall's situation, you have to be super good to beat out Derek Forrest, who is a rising player for Washington. I'm not going to label him anything except for just a rising player, but he's a rising player for Washington. You're going to be really good to beat out Benjamin St-Juste for the other spot if you're going to be outside, because they're not going to bench Emanuel Forbes. They keep that man on the field at all costs. But you're going to have to be really good to beat out Ben. You're going to be really good to beat out Derek. And if I'm betting my money, Dre, and I'm putting a parlay on it, and I'm putting $200 on that thing because my hand is hot, bruh, I'm betting that Derek Forrest beat him out, and I'm betting that Benjamin St-Juste beats out Kendall Fuller.
I mean, I feel like the outside has already been determined, right? But let's say you want to rock with Defoe. If he gets hurt, then who? You gonna put? You seen Percy Butler tape?
I was gonna say
you seen that man tape. It is not good.
But it's not good when he's in the box.
It's not good anywhere, bro. He's fast.
All right, I ain't gonna say too much because okay.
Like in the box is god awful. Like, but
yeah, he ain't good in the box. But
yeah, so it's like
I give him a shot at post.
What do you do? I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I think if they are gonna cut players, that should be happening real soon across not just Washington's franchise, but overall in the league. Because I mean, he got to go somewhere, and I feel like he still brings value to the team. I definitely would try to give him a look at free safety, but one thing about Washington, everything is
hell no. Keep me away from Wild Goose, bro.
Yes, please.
Everything is based on versatility with them. Like they want their guard to be able to play tight end, fullback, left tackle, right tackle, center.
Fullback got to play linebacker. Bro.
AJ, you don't like position flex?
I like it, but at some point, dog, just be good at one damn thing, man. Like, yeah. It's cool every now and then with certain things, but goddamn, bro, like
Trent Williams is good at guard, but guess where he's elite at?
Tackle, right? Yeah,
I ain't worried about putting that man at guard at any point of his career, bro. Stay out there at tackle, bro. Give him a couple snaps at guard if it's an emergency.
I just think they overdo that stuff. Like, look at all the players on this offensive line. Like, who is good at anything? Like,
nobody.
We just got a whole bunch of guys that could just do. They pretty much Epson all-in-one printers. But what do you do good?
Nothing, bro.
Great. What do you do good at great?
And that's the more frustrating thing about the offensive line. And we'll get Dre. Do you have anything on Martin before we go to Schomburg?
No, I was just gonna say what Quan Martin, as I said earlier. I mean, I love him, man. I just looked at him. You know, I went and watched a couple of his games, and I love how physical he is, man. We just haven't kind of had that aspect in the secondary, in the back end for a while. I mean, he's a guy. He seems to make plays as well. I mean, he has good instincts. I love, it was one of his plays where he obviously you'll see it on the highlights, but he's turning around really quickly on an interception over his back shoulder. I mean, just the instinctual plays like that, the physicality. He's not the biggest dude in the world, but he seems like he knows where to go. He has sideline to sideline speed. He can get to any end, and he makes plays. And you can't be mad at adding playmakers. And one thing, we sitting up here talking about Kendall Fuller and everything, but last year we weren't having this conversation. Last year we hated the depth on this team, especially in the secondary. We hated the secondary depth, especially cornerbacks. We didn't like most of the guys on the team. We didn't even know if we had a legit starting cornerback last year. So to talk about wondering where Kendall Fuller fits in at on this secondary now, it's a great problem to have for this season coming up.
That is a fact. Okay. Ricky Stromberg, from what I understand, is position flex as well. He can play center and he can play guard. But if we're ironing this whole thing out, I think he's a guy who is going to be playing center for Washington. He's best served at center. And from what I understand as well, that is he's a zone guy. And it kind of has a good idea of like angles, block angles, and second level blocking, which is really good for Washington. I don't know where he is in terms of how the enemy wants him to, or when the enemy, or how soon the enemy wants him to play. But obviously with Stromberg drafting somebody in the third round, your first 3 rounds, maybe your first 4 rounds, are somebody who you anticipate on having some significant playing time. And for Stromberg, at the very least, you kind of see what their plan is for center altogether. Like you had Nick Gates, who you brought in, right? And obviously Stromberg, you drafted Chase Rouillet is a guy where he's missed. I think he's played 10 games. I'm gonna double check, but I think he's played like 10 games over the last 2 seasons or last 3 seasons. Can't remember. But obviously a handful of games altogether. And you look at Stromberg, and we always knew, or we kind of assumed, that you got to have a plan with the interior offensive line this draft, whichever route they chose to take. And for them to go center at that early kind of shows that they really like Stromberg, first and foremost. But secondly, you don't know exactly what you're going to get from a Gates or what you're going to get from a Rouillet this year. But obviously with Rouillet making as much money as he is, it's probably somebody, Stromberg, that's going to be competing for the starting role come training camp.
Man,
And
too many damn competitions, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, but so Stromberg, to me, that pick, I mean, after reading about him and hearing about him, I feel like the vision for him is to start center. I mean, initially when they signed Nick Gates, I thought maybe he would be the starting center. But I mean, I think
Nick Gates backs him up.
Yeah, or I think Nick Gates, they may have a vision for him at left guard. Like, I mean, he may could slide over there because it's, I mean, right now you still have Andrew Norwell, Chris Paul. I mean, those guys in the conversation. I think if you
speaking of competition, right, AJ?
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, Nick Gates may win that competition by default, just because I don't know. Well, Chris Paul, the jury's still out on him, but Andrew Norwell, we just know he's not any good at this point in his career. So, I mean, you bring in Nick Gates, and then I thought, like I said, initially that he would start at center, but you draft a guy like Ricky Stromberg, who I think, you know, from everything I read, he's a potential starting center in this league. So maybe that's the vision for him. So that got me to thinking, okay, so your line left or right, maybe Leno, Gates, Stromberg, and then Cosme, I guess, at right guard, and then Wiley at right tackle. So I mean, that started to shape up a little bit of vision. So maybe that's the vision for them.
Another thing that I'm looking at right now too for Stromberg is he makes protection calls for the offense at Arkansas, which is important, right? Because in Washington, well, I take that back because I don't know what's going to happen with the enemy, but I know under Scott Turner, the center was the one who made the protection calls, and for you to have that trust in center, especially one who's presumably going to be starting for Washington, let's say he does end up starting for Washington, a rookie to that degree, that's going to take a high level of confidence in him. But also, it's going to help out Sam Howell a lot, because if they're making the calls for him, he doesn't have, that's one less thing off his plate at the line of scrimmage. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plans out. A very small thing, but at the same time, a leadership role kind of indicates, you know, the responsibilities that you have on the field. And that's going to be kind of interesting with Stromberg and just seeing how this whole interior thing plays out. I do want to, let's see. Amani said if I recall, Kansas City's offensive line had a bunch of 3rd, 7th rounders, right? I wouldn't be able to tell. Monty also mentioned that the rookies and Gates will battle it out when it came to Chase and Tyler. He called them the other guys. I forgot about Tyler Larson, who actually the offensive line looked a little bit looked pretty average, which is a good thing when Tyler Larson played. So imagine getting some consistent play in the interior. Here's one thing I did want to mention with this offense. Oh, my AJ, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you forgetting Andrew Norwell.
Oh, I mean everybody forgetting him. So I ain't
and
no
that boy's still on the roster collecting some pay. So
but listen, here's one thing.
Forget about him.
Here's one thing though. Like if I had to call one thing out, it would be the depth and in the conversation always surrounding like them having depth pieces. Sure, having offensive line depth is obviously really good because it's a very important. It's arguably the most important position outside of quarterback on the field, offensive line, defensive line. But my thing is with this depth conversation is how many times are we going to praise any team in the NFL? How many times are we going to praise a team in the NFL for having offensive line depth when the goal for a unit like that is to have the least amount of new rotations or new lineups on a week-to-week basis? Like you would prefer, obviously, in a perfect world, to have all 5 of your starters that you started out with the season to play all 17 games. But you don't need to be focused on like what happens if 2 or 3 offensive linemen goes down. If that happens, you're in trouble. You're already in trouble. So you need to have your best starting 5. And that goes back to the original point that AJ brought up of having your best 5 that does that one position on the offensive line really good. And then worry about the rest after that. Don't worry about position flex. But at the same time, like you need to have your best 5 out there because I don't really care too much about the depth. If you have bodies, cool. Like these guys are just names. Like they're names. They're not necessarily, if they're starters, they would be starting on another team. Like it is what it is. So that's the one thing that always kind of grinded my gears, for lack of a better term, is just understanding that like I don't care about the depth conversation when the goal is to have as few amount of new rotations or new lineups as possible in the offensive line. I don't care about depth. Like my starting 5 needs to be really good. All right. Where we at next? Braden Daniels, offensive lineman out of Utah. They picked him with their fourth round pick. Again, we had the same conversation about position flex, so we kind of know what I think he's tackle and guard, I believe. Is what he's capable of doing.
That boy, his scouting report is he played left tackle. He played right tackle, left guard, center.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He even played offensive coordinator, bro. Like
oh my! Oh, he ran a 4.9. Okay, that's what's up.
Now, before we move on, the interesting part with him is they already told us he has bad feet. And they're like, oh, we're going to try him out probably at tackle first. What? You won't put that man in the box.
Most people that watch him say he's definitely better at guard. I mean, I know they said in his career he did play like all 5 positions on the offensive line, but I think everyone has seen that his projection should be a guard. I mean, so it's a little weird that they're trying him out of tackle. It's almost as weird as how they look at Sadiq Charles. Like, I still don't know what position Sadiq Charles plays on his team. I mean, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? I mean, so maybe that's their new Sadiq Charles and Braden Daniels.
Sadiq need to worry about. You know what? God bless him. Let me keep my comments to myself.
Hold up, he's still on the roster, right?
He's still on the roster. Guess what? Competing.
That boy in the clubs.
Yeah, competing. That's what Ron said, bro. Aaron Cole mentioned that offensive line has a higher risk injury than other spots. So depth is important. But my point, I guess, let me read this whole comment for those that listen to the podcast. O-line inherently has higher injury risk than other spots, so depth is of utmost importance. How many teams keep the same 5 long term in a season? So I don't disagree at all. Like, yes, depth is important, but I just think it's a cap to it. Like, I think you need to have, like, your number 2 guys need to be solid, right? And I'm not saying don't care about your third string guys, but I think the importance is finding that you have the best 5 at your starting spots and not worrying about if somebody goes down on their left or their right. I need this starting guard to move out to tackle. I don't care about that. Like, I want my best guard playing, and if somebody gets hurt, he stays at guard. And that's what I'm worried about. And I think like we focus on position flex so much sometimes, and including the coaching staff, like they focus on it so much sometimes that they just don't and AJ asked this question a couple times in the pre-draft interviews that we were having. Like, it's why not just find somebody who is good at one spot and go from there? Like, if you find your best, we talked about it. If you find your best left tackle, are you worried about if he can play guard or center for you if somebody goes down? I want to keep my man at left tackle. So that's kind of where I'm at altogether. Like, it's just like the depth thing is cool, but I think it should be capped off to a certain conversation. Like, I'm not going to brag about offensive line depth. I'm just not going to do that.
Right, because you hope to never have to put them guys in unless someone get hurt. And if they do get hurt, you should be shit out of luck in a sense, in some regard.
Yes. Okay. KJ Henry, edge rusher out of Clemson, 5th round pick. Dre, I know you said you mentioned that you like this one really good, or this pick really good. So you get the first stab at this one. What do you think about KJ?
No, and this is a guy because he's, again, a player who I think fits what they at least want to do. You know, when Chase Young and them were playing a couple of years ago, him and Montez together, you heard the subliminal shots at those guys that, we have certain guys on the defense that's not standing in their lanes and not playing their gaps and not, playing their assignments. Now they're actually going out and getting a guy who's pretty much known for exactly that. He plays his assignment. He plays his gaps. Like, you can see it in his production numbers. He didn't have a high sack total at Clemson, but he was still a dynamic player. But he was really good at setting the edge, and he was really good at, containing his lanes and standing his gaps and things like that. I mean, obviously, you have to do that to play for Dabo at Clemson. So, I mean, I just thought that, I could see the vision with a KJ Henry pick because he's a guy that right now, I mean, he doesn't have to start. Obviously, he has Chase and Montez over him, but he's a guy, when he comes in as a situational guy, they can count on him to be disciplined and play within the scheme that they're trying to run.
Oh boy. KJ Henry does nothing for me at all. I feel like this team needed if they were going to do defensive end, they needed someone that's a natural bender that can come off the edge. Yeah, I don't know I don't have any anticipation for KJ Henry. I think he's just another body once again. I just would have liked someone that can turn the corner, like, you feel me? And I haven't seen that out of KJ. I'm familiar with him. I know he was a top recruit, but he just also never really produced any of those athletic abilities to that nature at Clemson. He has no bend. And I want a defensive end, especially that's going to possibly be a rotational piece for Sweat or Young, either side, to be a natural bender off that edge. I think we talked about it, like where I had said if they were to go edge rusher, you want those type of guys like a Nolan Smith. But, the more aggressive team within the division, they went and got Jalen Carter, and they went and got Hassan Reddick 2.0, Nolan Smith, all in the first round. So, yeah, I mean, KJ Henry does nothing for me.
So I'm gonna read the scouting report from Lance Zerline. So he says, I'll just do the overview. He says, highly athletic edge defender with good size, has upfield burst, but he tends to be a face-up rusher and will need to improve his hand usage for more effective corner turns. He can be dynamic when twisting and blitzing as a movable piece around the defensive front. He does a nice job of setting up inside rush that is often too quick for tackles. He can dart and disrupt as a one-gapper with his hand in the ground, but has more trouble than expected setting the edge as a run defender. So just understanding this overview, it does sound like they're bringing him in to rush the passer. At the very least, that's where he's going to start off in terms of pass rush situations, probably. And also shows that like as a one gapper, that is also a good thing, because that's exactly what Del Rio loves to run. Or excuse me, that is the principle of his defense. His defensive front is a one gap defense. So whatever their goals are with the stunts alignments or just even setting them up on the edge, that's up to them. But it does work in terms of the system. I don't know. I don't know personally what he's going to look like until I watch him. But interesting, two different takes from AJ and Dre on this player. So it's going to be something to watch. His NFL comparison was Lorenzo Carter. So I guess you
one man game.
Mm-hmm. Hold on now. Where are we at next? Edge rusher. We got two more picks. Okay.
Excuse my language, but who the fuck is Lorenzo Carter? Like, I mean, I know who he is, but like, what has?
I thought he said Lorenzo Alexander.
I know what you thought. I know what you thought he said.
I'm tripping.
Like, what has he done to even be a comp? Just put Jag, whoever wrote that song.
He's had 18.5 sacks in his career.
Played
with the Falcons in 2022. I don't know. I don't think I knew who Lorenzo Carter was. I was thinking of a throwback.
He out of Georgia, right?
Huh?
He out of Georgia. I know he played for the Giants.
Yeah, he played. He was Georgia. He went to Georgia. Okay. All right. Here we go. Moving on. Running back. Chris Rodriguez Jr. This now out of Kentucky. This was a guy where I was reading transcripts as well. And Amani, when you asked about what input EB has on the offensive line, I'm not sure, but Ron did shed some light on his input altogether during the draft process. They would occasionally ask his opinion on a situation from time to time, and one of those situations that his input was received and obviously played out to them selecting Chris Rodriguez was a guy that was Bieniemy's guy. He was a guy who's saying that Rodriguez was a running back who they had no negative grades on, and that his team did a really good job of looking into this player. So if he was available and it made sense for Washington at a certain round, this is the guy that he wants. So for Washington to follow through and end up getting Rodriguez for Bieniemy is probably going to be Bieniemy's favorite project on this offense. If outside of Sam Howell, because that's the most important thing. But second favorite project with Chris Rodriguez is working with a guy that he helped bring into the building. And I mentioned to you all his run style. I only saw his highlights for a couple seconds, but I'm gonna get into his film. But his run style just reminded me of Alfred Morris. I think he's a little bit faster. I understand he ran like a 4.5 or something like that. Chris Rodriguez did, but ultimately being like just his run style and how heavy his lower body is, and just his competitive to kind of work through multiple arm tackles at one time and take body blows and still stay on his feet with some contact balance. That's impressive. So I don't know what their plans are his immediate rookie season, but I can definitely see Bieniemy ultimately finding ways to get Rodriguez on the field.
No, so this was the one pick that, I'm not going to say I wasn't happy about it because it's a 6th round. I mean, it's hard for me to get upset at any 6th round pick, but what I was looking for in the draft, kind of what I was looking for, at cornerback in this draft, and it was a guy, playmaker, turnover. I was looking for more of the home run hitting running back because I felt like you got the Brian Robinson, he's the bruiser. You got Antonio Gibson. I mean, he's a home run threat, but he's not a consistent home run threat. I mean, I don't even know if we can legitimately sit up here and call him a real home run threat because we've only seen it on a screen pass, really. So, I mean, but that's why in this draft I was looking at certain running backs like the Chains, and it was a guy that was sitting there when Rodriguez was drafted, Deuce Vaughn. It was a guy I talked about before the draft, Kansas State. I love that guy. He's really small. The guy's a hell of a runner. I mean, I watched so much Kansas State games over the years. I mean, every time I watched him, he stood out. So, I mean, he was right there, and then the Cowboys drafted him, of course, right after we drafted Chris Rodriguez. But, I mean, I like Chris Rodriguez, the player. I mean, the player's fine. It's not the player I have an issue with. I mean, obviously, I think he's a good running back. And I mean, to hear Alfred Morris comp from you, Jamal, I mean, that's a hell of a comp, especially with him being bigger in size than Alf was. And he is a little faster than Alf. But I mean, I'm going to love the player. I'm going to root for the player. But this was a pick that, I was just kind of looking for something different. But I can't hate the player.
Magic says Rodriguez is a knockoff Geis. That's interesting.
No, not at all. No. Chris Rodriguez, he's cool, but like Dre, I was looking for a more change of pace type of running back, running style. I guess 6th round, go ahead, take your projects and see what you can make happen. I feel like there was still some players on the board, not just at running back, but in the 6th round. You still had Kayshon Boutte, wide receiver from LSU, that should have been a 1st round pick, if not for adjustment year under Brian Kelly. But I think that something we probably don't have planned to speak about on the show, but I think the guy that they ended up bringing in as a change of pace running back and also has flex at wide receiver is Casimir Allen out of UCLA. I don't know if anyone has checked him out, but he played some running back at UCLA, but also wide receiver. He's a kick returner, punt returner. I think that they'll utilize him in the backfield here and there. And
AJ, hold on. Is it true that he runs a 4.5? That dude looks like he runs Dante Hall speed.
Casimir Allen?
Yeah, I mean, I know he had like a low 40 time.
I don't know what his 40 is, but his film, he looked like a 4.3.
Yeah.
Like I know he got a track background. He don't look like a 4.5 to me. If that's what they clocked him at, that boy is moving. So
I'm looking it up now. Casimir ran 4.55. Yeah.
Wow.
He ran a 4.55?
Yeah, 4.55. 8.7 inch hands, 29 arm length, 5'8", 183. That's gonna be interesting because this is probably I can see why he went undrafted.
He must have had COVID that day.
I think he said the conditions were bad because that he doesn't look 4.5 at all on tape. Like he runs by dudes effortlessly.
Like, on tape, you're 4.3. So, I don't know. I didn't even pay attention to his 40. Never looked it up because if you look at the tape, you could see like
bad weather at their pro day. Justino checked in, said that.
Okay, yeah, you can see that boy's moving, but I see him being as their change of pace type of back in a sense, and also being able to use him just like how they probably intend to use Curtis.
Oh, they had a monsoon
punt returns. Put him on punt returns.
Oh,
that's
your
Dax Mill replacement.
I mean, Dax is gone, bro. Like that's dead and over with. But even immediately on special teams, he could be an impact. But I think there'll be a role for him in the offense too. Just how I expect Eric Bieniemy to run the same thing Kansas City was running because he had a major role in calling the plays there and being a part of that. Like I don't see it being any differentiating of that. It's just Mahomes is the quarterback and Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett will be the ones throwing the ball. We don't know, but I still expect them to make those plays and opportunities with those talents. But Casimir Allen definitely makes the team.
We were going to talk about the UFAs that they signed. I just had a general comment on it, so let's go ahead and knock out the last guy, Andre Jones, linebacker out of Louisiana. 7th round pick. I don't think we should be expecting much of Andre. I have all of 7 words to say or 8 words, however many words is I don't have much to expect from Andre. That was it. We'll figure out the rest when he comes down to camp and see what he really looks like out of Louisiana. At the very least, I can read the scouting report. I do him a favor and do us a favor.
Supposed to be another edge rusher, another one that can't bend the corner.
I was gonna say he's a guy that didn't stand out to me at all. I watched him. I said, okay, he's a body. He's sealing his jag.
Man.
Body to body.
Drops. Doesn't really show a 40 time or doesn't show close. It doesn't play like his 40 time or doesn't really show a closing speed, closing burst.
Andre Jones.
This is for Andre Jones.
Yeah, he definitely 4.8.
Overall, he's been a terrific defender over the past 3 seasons. He projects as a 3-4 outside linebacker and will be a situational pass rusher. Also used on special teams. Boom. There it is. Special teams.
Go.
That's your way in, Andre.
There it is. That's it.
All right. Hey, so let's go ahead and get into literally a warm body. Appreciate everybody that's checking in right now. Let's get some make sure if y'all haven't done so, make sure you hit the follow button or subscribe button. Make sure you hit the liking. Give us some comments, show some love in the chat. I appreciate y'all checking in. Jacino, Reap, Magic said Andre called himself a unicorn. All right, cool. Give us some material, player, because we're gonna need that. His name's gonna pop up for sure during the rookie mini camps in a couple weeks. So we're gonna see what's up. All right, so AJ mentioned Cosmere Allen as a receiver, and so Washington signed 12 undrafted free agents, and out of those 12, 5 of them are receivers. Cosmere Allen, UCLA, Zion Bowens, Hawaii, Jalen Sample, Minnesota State, Mitchell Tinsley, Penn State, Bryson Tremaine, Stanford. One thing that I think we really need to pay attention to with these undrafted free agents, 1 or 2 of them are going to make the roster for what they can do as a receiver. And I had to emphasize that part because AJ, I think, is right in terms of like his return ability could get him on the roster, Cosmere Allen. So take that for him actually being a good special teamer, right? But ultimately, one of these 5 guys that I mentioned, they need receiver help. And what I mean by that is like not your top 3 guys. But I think we've been content with depth or saying that they've had depth for some time. And that includes De'Ami Brown, but I think they're going to give De'Ami Brown some competition. They're going to get everybody on the back half of that receiving depth chart some competition because it's like if your top 3 are good at what they do, that's cool. But you're going to need some help, especially with Curtis Samuel's season or his contractual season in 2023 being his last year here in Washington, right? And then obviously Jahan and Terry are on new deals, but that's all you have. You just have Terry and Jahan. Somebody's gonna have to step up, and they didn't do anything in the offseason in terms of free agency or draft to get a receiver, right? But they picked up 5 of them as an undrafted free agent, so they're gonna give these guys as many opportunities as they could probably to try to make that roster and push somebody. So and maybe even push Dax Mills, thank God. So yeah, that's kind of the situation in terms of undrafted free agents. I'm definitely going to be tapped into 4 of them because I'm gonna look at Cashmere, but I'm gonna see who else is out there to see like who has a really good shot. But I think it's going to be at least 2 of these guys that makes the roster.
Yeah, and you got to look at it. I mean, I'm looking at the roster now, and I got 3 wide receivers that are locks on the team. That leaves about 3 positions open on the wide receiver group. I mean, with Cam Sims departing, like you said, one of these guys is going to make it. I mean, De'Ami Brown, he will be a guy that you would think is a lock, but we've heard his name being shopped in trade rumors. But I don't know if there's any value for De'Ami Brown at this point. But that goes to show that his roster spot's not a lock either. So, like I said, you got 3 wide receiver positions open. Dax Milner's no lock. I mean, obviously you brought in the Cashmere Allen, who I'm going to predict right now is probably going to make the 53 because the special teams alone probably. But again, he's also dynamic. But one of the guys I did check out, the reason why I checked them out because I watched their games, obviously, and we just had Jahan Dotson play for him last year, but Penn State. Mitchell Tinsley, he's a decent sized wide receiver. He's about Terry's size, roughly, but he's a chain mover. I mean, he's a guy that, I mean, he's not like the big target that Cam Sims was, but he can kind of play that Cam Sims role, and he's sure-handed. He'll move the chains. He's not dynamic by any means. He's not going to blow past anyone. He's not going to get, a ton of separation, but he is pretty, good catching in traffic. And like I said, he's a guy that you can rely on in the red zone. You can rely on him to move the chains. So I think he's a guy that I may predict make the team as an undrafted free agent. I mean, but again, you brought in 4 or 5 of these guys in undrafted free agents. Somebody's going to make the roster. It could be 1, it could be 2, but like I said, there's 3 positions open, so it's going to be some good competition. But I don't know good competition, but it's going to be competition.
Yeah, let's refrain from that. That may get AJ sick with all this competition words thrown out on this episode. Yes, the DN out of Bowie State, Amani. I'm going to be tapped into him too, Joshua Pryor. They actually got another guy that they invited to rookie mini camp I forgot his name, but he's from Bowie State too, like all conference.
Raymond Boone.
Yeah. They invited him over to the camp as well.
What did he say? Hold on. Damn, what did he say?
He spoke. He got an interview.
Nah, I seen a tweet come across. Hold on, I'm about to tell you what he said.
Jacino said Mitch Tinsley is John Nice and big dude from Stanford. Monty said whoever the hell gets Dax off this team.
Okay, so he said he has Sean Taylor instance, range, game-changing ability, motor, Ed Reed play recognition, 9 times out of 10, the ball in the air, it's mine, rangy, athletic, hands like Chris Carter playing defensive back.
Who said that? He said that?
He tweeted that.
That was his own scout report?
He tweeted that yesterday.
Fellas. Time to wrap up this show.
Hey, hold up, but we did sign a quarterback too. Somebody need to challenge Sam Howell, AJ. They say this guy tore up Fordham. I never watched them play, but they say this guy tore up.
Who broke the record?
The next competition we need to make is Robert Barrett versus Eric Bieniemy for head coach. Because there's a competition everywhere. Like it almost feels like it's a reality show. Like
you said something about that. The NFL needed.
It's like The Bachelor at this point because it's a competition everywhere.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
Competition, bro. That's the theme of this goddamn episode. Competition, man. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna wrap it up for us. I think I'm fellas, I'm talking to y'all live, but I'm gonna try to work on a little interview. We're gonna maybe get this done this week, but I'll keep in touch with you all through the group chat. But so we may have one more episode this week breaking down the Commanders picks, but that's gonna wrap it up for us right now. Hawk, appreciate you checking in as always too. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of here. But all 32 will be back in a couple of days, so definitely have another episode Trapper Dive coming out for you this week, maybe 3. So we'll see. But take it easy, y'all be safe, all that good stuff. Peace.
Yes, sir.